Wachira is one of the guests that we have in the studio this morning. She is the executive director at CREAW. That's the Center for Rights and Education Awareness. No, Center for Rights, Education and Awareness. Right? I've put the hand at the right place.
Yes, you did.
And here you are, and welcome.
Thank you. Very, very happy to be here this morning.
Kenya's biggest conversation. That's the hot seat of the Situation Room.
Oh, excellent.
The privilege is all yours.
Oh, very happy to be here.
She's here alongside Joyce Muchena, who's the head of gender mainstreaming at the Mastercard Foundation. Good morning, Joyce.
Good morning.
Welcome. Feel at home. And to all of you ladies in the house, happy International Day of the Girl Child.
Thank you.
We already did with her, so let's do with the two of you. Speech. Starting with you, Joy. It's a moment for giving a speech. What does it mean, the International Day of the Girl Child? What does that mean, Joyce?
Interesting question. The International Day of the Girl Child, basically, I wish all days would be the Day of the Girl Child, and I think they are. Mm-hmm. But this day is really chosen out of the many 365 days to take a moment to pause and take a check of what has been going on in the lives of girls in whichever country. In this case, of course, in our very own country and in our communities. What are the gains they are making? What are the challenges they are still facing? And probably what can be done, to propel them to greater heights of thriving in whatever it is they want to do, whether it's education, whether it's training, whether it's having a good time, leisure and all that they need to do as human beings. So it's really celebrating what it means being a girl, what it means being a young woman, and what gifts and talents they bring, and how we can enhance their ability to take advantage of their gifts and talents.
What's the genesis of this? Why was it started, and who started it?
It's a UN day. I mean, like many days that we celebrate, the International Women's Day, the International Day for Persons with Disability, the International Youth Day. I think that the UN, in its wisdom, looks at some of the biggest challenges or problems around the world and determines certain things that need to be done by nations to address those issues. So 10 years ago, this day was elevated as a day in which the world would be encouraged to take a stop and check how the various challenges that girls face in various communities are being addressed, and what the girls themselves would be saying, actually, really putting the girls in the front and center of this messaging. So the why the day is really because the world acknowledges that there are significant challenges that girls tend to face that are not necessarily equally impacting the rest of humanity, either older women or men and boys, by virtue of them being girls, but also by virtue of us living in a society that arranges itself in a manner that often leaves a girl holding the shorter end of the stick most of the time, so to speak. So I'll stop here.
So it's for mainstreaming basically the issues of the girl child, right? We can put it that way, just in summary.
Yes.
Higher.
Thank you.
Wangeshi, the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, tell us about it. What is it that you do, and where do you do it, and how?
Very, very interesting, and I'm happy to be here. Rightfully, as you said, we're a women's rights organization, but also focusing on issues of girls. So today is a big day for us, celebrating International Day of the Girl. Our work is in different parts of the country, but what is really at the heart of our work is, one, ensuring that we empower women and girls into leadership positions. So like the last general election, we were very, very happy to see more women coming into leadership position. From the position, for example, of the governor, we started with 0, we came to 3, and now we have 7. We are also very, very passionate around issues of economic empowerment. We're also very, very passionate around issues of sexual and reproductive health rights for girls. And finally, also very, very passionate around issues of eliminating violence against women and girls. In fact, as an organization, we run a toll-free line. And it's important that I can be able to share this toll-free line so that if someone is going through violence, they know there is a place they can be able to call, they can be able to get a counselor, they can be able to get a lawyer, they can also be able to be referred to other services in the country. And it runs from 8 in the morning all the way to 5 in the evening. And the number is 0800 720 186. In addition to that, there is also a national toll-free line, which is 1195. That covers the whole of the country. For the children, there is 116. I think it's important for people to have those numbers so that if someone is going through violence, whether it's within their home, whether there's a neighbor, whether it's on their way to school, whether it's coming back from school, if it's happening in school, then there's a place they can be able to seek refuge and really be able to get the services that they do require.
So what do you do if someone made a call to this toll-free line, 0800 720 186?
We are able to listen to you because your voice is very, very important. We are able to listen to you to be able to understand why are you calling us? What is it that you are going through? Some of the cases we have received are cases of young girls who are going through violence, and violence, for example, happening at a home level, violence happening on their way to school, violence happening from people who are around them. So once you make the call, at least you're going to be able to get a lawyer who can be able to listen to you. You can be able to get a counselor, again, who can be able to listen to you. And if it's a matter, then also need to be referred to a police station very close to where you are. We are going to be able to refer you to a police station. We are going to refer you maybe to a medical institution so that then you can be able to get the support. So from both legal, medical, shelter, again, very, very important component. If someone is not able to go back to a home that is violent, then we can also be able to refer you to a shelter so that you can be able to get that refuge.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to follow up a little bit on that, but let me just do it. So someone has called and they're telling you, I am witnessing violence happening to a girl on her way to school.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm in a certain location. Either they've called the national toll-free, which you said is 1195.
Yes.
They've called and they're talking to somebody on the other end. So what do you do immediately? Because the violence is happening as I watch, and I am calling you because there's a violence happening as I watch. So
I think at the end of the call, what we do is really be able to give advice. But there's a bigger responsibility because I could be in Nairobi and this is happening, for example, in Mombasa, meaning the people who are in Mombasa, they are the first hand to be able to get the kind of support that this young girl, rightfully that you said, that can be able to support her so that then she can be able to get the support that she does require. So for us at that point is really to be able to guide, because we are not per se in the site where it is happening. And therefore, the responsibility goes beyond CREAW, who is providing that advice, who is providing that psychosocial support. So there is a bigger responsibility as a citizen than to be able. And the good thing is that at least someone even took time to be able to call. That's the first thing that we should all be able to do so that we're able to get that kind of support. Yeah.
So, I mean, even as this day is being commemorated, there's so many levels of issues and challenges that, by the time you're looking at a full-grown woman who probably still has the issues, and then you look at what a girl would have gone through. I mean, we're not talking about, the urban girl who is of privilege, who is in the minority, but the majority of young girls who don't have access, who don't have opportunity, who then go through gender-based violence, sexual abuse and things like this. So what are some of those issues that we had hoped, or that we hope that even as this day is commemorated, that we can continue to look at then making those non-issues moving into the future?
I think the question you raised is very, very important, because this is an important day that we are celebrating, but also we are acknowledging that there are still so many barriers, and the barriers are quite many, because we are talking about there are still parts of our country, for example, that practice female genital mutilation. In fact, as a country, we have about 22 counties that practice female genital mutilation. What does it happen? What does that mean to a young girl who has gone through female genital mutilation? In some of our communities, what we have seen, as soon as the girl gets go through female genital mutilation, she's eligible for marriage. What does also that you're talking about early marriages, and it means that this girl then is not able to complete school, like so many other girls in the world who would want to complete their education. We are talking about cases of gender-based violence happening at a home level, happening on their way to school. It also means that as she gives birth as a teen mother, and this country, again, very, very many cases of teen mothers. In fact, when you look at the report from the Ministry of Education, from the Ministry of Health this year, between January and February, they reported about 45,000 girls who are teen mothers. And it means one out of these girls, they're between the age of 10 to 19. Can you imagine a 10-year girl who is a mother? What does that mean for her life? She starts quickly. She has a child. She starts living an adult life, and this adult life means that she has to, for lack of a better word, she has to start to hustle to be able to feed this child. And the data is very clear, because it also shows that I think UNFPA again was able to release a data showing that about 300,000 girls yearly are not able, they're teen mothers, and only 2% of them go back to school. 2% is a very, very small margin, small percentage of the girls who are not able to go to school. Why are they not able to school? You have a child here, you come home, and then the first thing you're told, you have to take care of the child. You cannot be able to just go bounce back to school. And well, we appreciate that our country, for example, compared, for example, to other countries within the region, Kenya has a very good policy, has very, very good laws. One of the policy that has been put by Ministry of Education is that if a girl gets pregnant, then she can be able to come back to school. That's really positive, because what does it mean? It's not encouraging more girls to get pregnant, but what it is doing, that in case someone gets pregnant, then they have an opportunity to be able to come back to school.
The pregnancy and childbirth is not a barrier to education.
It's not education. But we also know that giving birth is not as I'm bouncing tomorrow.
You're not going back tomorrow once you've had a child today, kind of thing.
It's going to take a toll on you.
You need to have a whole ecosystem to be able to take care of the child, so that you can be able to come back to school.
So let's then pivot the conversation to the day and what we want to talk about, which is about dignified and fulfilling work, and what you have been doing with Mastercard Foundation on that. Let's just start with Mastercard Foundation. You know, people not many people know Mastercard Foundation. So just tell us about it then, Joyce. Who is Mastercard Foundation? What do you do? Where? And also your association with any other that has that similar name.
Thank you very much. I think, you've put it well. Maybe not a lot of people know the Mastercard Foundation, but I know also a lot of other people do actually know our work, including our partners, for example, the CREAW here. So the Mastercard Foundation was founded in 2006 as a private foundation. And this was coming from a gift to young people by Mastercard for corporate. So Mastercard Foundation is an independent organization run by by its own board of directors, and it's headquartered in Canada. And currently, so in our first decade of work, from 2006 to around 2016, 2017, our biggest focus was on financial inclusion and education for young people across the world, basically. In the current decade, we have a sharper focus on education and employment enablement for young people, largely in Africa and among the indigenous communities in Canada. So we do have a strategic direction that we refer to as Young Africa Works. So Young Africa Works has a bold commitment to reach about 30 million young people who will have achieved dignified and fulfilling work by 2030. And if you double click on that, we also commit that 70% of these 30 million will be young women. So essentially saying 21 million young women in Africa will gain dignified and fulfilling work through the work that the Mastercard Foundation is going to be doing with various stakeholders, governments, private sector, civil society, communities across the continent. We are currently based in 7 countries in Africa, but we do have programs running in more than 7 countries. So Kenya is one of those countries, and within the East African region, we have Uganda, Rwanda, and Ethiopia. And on the Western African side, we have Senegal, Ghana, and Nigeria, where we do have presence. And of course, in Toronto, Canada. Outside of those countries where we have physical presence, we also have a lot of programs running. And this ranges from investment in education, investment in entrepreneurship that enables work creation, which then, through various interventions by our partners, is able to address the barriers that would stop in the way of young people accessing, the right skills to be able to be ready for work, or accessing the right work opportunities and thriving in them. So essentially, that's in a nutshell what we are focusing on. And as I said, for the current decade up to 2030, we are really focusing quite a lot on the African continent. In Kenya, for example, out of the 30 million young people that I just mentioned, Kenya is going to contribute about 7 million.
Okay.
And if you look at our 70% young women target, that translates to about 5 million young women gaining dignified and fulfilling work by 2030. I'll pause here.
So, I hear what you're saying. I think to also then understand exactly how then young women specifically, because I remember when the Mastercard did launch Young Africa Works under former President Uhuru Kenyatta a few years ago. So then how does this play out? How does it play out, and what can young women, what can young girls then actually have access to? Are we talking about loans for business? Are we talking about making sure that, a stipend is paid for education? Are we making sure that they can access grants and scholarships for school? How does it then come down to directly impact the girl living in a neighborhood in Nairobi or Kitale or Garissa? How does that then play out, tangibly?
That's a very good question. So, as I mentioned, the foundation does not implement any programs directly. We work with various stakeholders who are in themselves specialists and really well knowledgeable in these areas. So, to give an example, one of the oldest partnerships perhaps that Kenya is familiar with is the Wings to Fly program, which is geared towards scholarship at individual level for both, young men and young women, but of course focuses a lot on girls, as I have mentioned. So that's one example when you think about direct interventions that respond to very direct needs of marginalized young people. So that's scholarship access. But you will also realize that we have other partnerships that create opportunities for other people to access, for example, credit facilities for their businesses. right? And we have a partnership with the Equity Bank, the Equity Group Foundation. We have a partnership with the KCB. We do have a partnership also that enables young people to access skills. And this is, for example, the work we do with Moringa School. So that's very focused on what are the kind of skills that young people need today to be ready for work.
Okay.
And our support, for example, on the TVET, in the TVET space, is also looking at how can we enable technical training institutions to offer the skills that are needed today, the skills that the market in Kenya needs. And so I can go on and talk about our various partnerships. But what I would like to say also is, because we are focusing on vulnerable young people, aside from those direct type of interventions, there is also the recognition that we need to create an enabling environment that will give young people the confidence to tap into the opportunities created not only by our partners, but by everyone else. So when you think about problems that Wangeshi mentioned, for example, girls falling pregnant at the age of 10, because we are in a society that almost supports or condones that, a girl who has unfortunately been defiled, we don't take the matter through the justice system. We want to have a little bit of local mechanism there and give the perpetrator of that abuse a soft landing. So what that means then is that a lot more girls who would have benefited from these opportunities fail to do so.
Right.
So in partnership with organizations such as the Center for Rights Awareness and Center for Rights Education and Awareness, FAWE, another organization called the Global Give Back Circle, we are actually looking at the community systems that need to be unlocked and engaged in order to give girls the voice, the space, and the enablement for them to tap into these opportunities. So I'll let Wangeshi speak about their work, but I do hope that when I describe both the individual level type of resourcing and the community level, then you begin to realize that to get ourselves to 7 million young people in Kenya or 30 million young people in the continent, we need to intervene at different levels.
Just to be
at individual level, at community level, and of course at systemic level, where then we gain an understanding of what are the laws, what are the policies, what are the enablements that young people tap into in order to thrive in their work.
Thank you, Joyce. Let's take a break. When you come back, then Wangeshi, you can tell us what exactly CREAW has been doing in this, and what kind of impact you've had so far. I'm sure you're reporting to your supporting partners and saying, so this is what we've done, and this is how far we've gone in the Young Africa Works strategy. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's the Situation Room. It's the day, International Day of the Girl Child, and we're celebrating and commemorating it today, looking at what the Mastercard Foundation and partners have been doing with the Young Africa Works strategy, the strategy of making sure that at least 7 million Kenyans have access to dignified and fulfilling work by 2030, 5 million of them being young girls in the country. So, the Executive Director for the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, Wachira, is here with us, and Joyce Muchena, who's the head of gender mainstreaming at the Mastercard Foundation, is here with her as well.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
In the studio with us is Joyce Muchena, the head of gender mainstreaming at the Mastercard Foundation, and Wachira, Executive Director at CREAW, the Center for Rights, Education and Awareness, implementing partner for this strategy with the Mastercard Foundation. They are looking at making sure that by the time we get to 2030, which is 7 years and 3 months' time, some 7 million young Kenyans will have gotten into dignified and fulfilling work, 5 million of them being young girls. And this strategy started in 2016. Is it? 2018. So it's 4 years down the road. Okay. So as CREAW, you've been partners with this. So how do you tap into this? How do you come in? What do you do?
Our journey with the Mastercard Foundation started at the height of COVID-19, and this is because of some of the measures that were put by government of Kenya, and were important measures to be able to reduce the spread of COVID. Some of the measures, for example, are the closure for schools, the stay at home or work from home, and we know that for some women, home is not the safest for them. That's where actually violence does happen. So we did. The foundation actually did reach out to us to be able to see how can we be able to respond to cases of gender-based violence that were being reported in different parts of the country. So we came in together as 3 organizations and were able to provide legal support, psychosocial support, but we also went to the communities where all this was happening. In total, we worked in 10 counties. We were able to provide dignity kits, and this is because if you look at our education system, a lot of pads are given in school. Now you have a big population of girls at home, and through the foundation, we were able to distribute pads to girls at home. We were able to have a conversation with the local leaders to see how do we keep the girls safe, even as we continue to stay at home. But also, while all that was happening, we knew that shelter was a big a gap when it comes that someone is calling, they're looking for support. Well, you can give them advice, but where do they go? 72 hours, someone need to have gotten kind of response. And this response is from medical. So what we did, we also supported in total about 10 shelters in the country, whereby they are able to get in, be able to be in that space and be able to get refuge. But really what warms my heart in this work is that as an organization and in partnership with the foundation, we're able to set the first survivors fund in the country. What does the survivors fund mean? We know when someone has been kicked out of their home, they have very little to carry from there. Or they've made a decision to get out of the logbook, for example, if they have one, is not under their name. If there's a title deed, perhaps is not in their name, perhaps is a joint. And where do you start from? So as a foundation, we thought it would be very, very important to support women who are survivors of violence to be able to access credit. And what we are doing is that they can be able to access this credit from 10,000 all the way to 500,000 to be able to rebuild their lives. So some of the stories you heard from the women is that as a result of accessing this fund is that I have been able to rebuild my life. I have been able to move from an environment that is abusive. And if they decide to stay in that environment that is abusive, a number of things are shifting there, because money is also power. When you have some of that little money, it shifts the conversation. So we are seeing that by setting this kind of a fund, and we have even influenced at national level. Remember, Kenya is part of the Generation Equality Committee, and what Kenya has done is one of the commitment is to set a survivors fund. So we're hoping that by learning from what we are doing, it really can be able to influence at the national level. And building on to that work, very, very important, is that we know that, again, through COVID, a lot of girls became very, very pregnant. And we are working closely with FAWE Kenya and Kenya Red Cross, and in total we're in about 20 counties. Perhaps I could just mention some of the counties, because it's important for people to be able to understand where we are and where we are doing this work. So we're in Nakuru, we're in Nairobi, we're in Machakos, we're in Elgeyo Marakwet, we're in Kiambu, Garissa, Bungoma, Kakamega, Nyeri, Migori, Murang'a, Kajiado, Narok, Homa Bay, Trans Nzoia, Nyandarua, Busia, Meru, Siaya, and Turkana. Those counties, what we are looking is that they are girls who dropped out of school during COVID and after COVID. How do we retain them back to school? How do they come back to school? What is it that we must be able, what are the conversations that we must be able to have at a family level? Because I think all the values start at a family level.
Yep.
How does the whole religious institutions come to play? How do parents and guardians become part of this conversation? Because if a girl has given birth, somebody got to take care of the child so that then they can be able to come back to school. And it has been seen that women who've been able, or young women who've been able to go to school, the outcomes are totally different. Whether it's around their health, whether it's the number of babies they want to have, I think the conversation does happen, change there. So what we also also looking at how do we increase budget allocation. Budget in this country is a big one. In this recent budget for this year, the Cabinet Secretary, Professor Makoha, is on record that the budget for sanitary towels shifted from 470 million to 260 million. That's half the budget. What does that mean for a girl used to access sanitary pads in the school? It's reduced. They are not likely to have. So what we are doing is to be able to come and fill that gap and be able to provide sanitary pads for girls so that they can be able to be in school. And the days are many. If she's experiencing her periods 5 days in a month, in a year, how many days are those?
60.
Those are 60. Those
Yep.
are 2 months.
It's 2 months.
If someone is going to miss school 2 months in a year, and if they started their periods in class 7, what does that mean for by the time she gets to Form 4? It means that she's going to lose a number of days, not even a number. She's going to lose many days in school and therefore not be able to compete at the same level. So what we are doing is to be able to influence policy. One, to ensure that we have a budget increase, and this is at the national level, but also at the county level, because the counties also continue to receive resources from the from Treasury. What we are also doing is to be able to see how can these girls also be able to have a voice.
Yeah.
Because I think most of the time these decisions are made by other
made
policy
for them.
They are made for them. So we're also looking at where do we create this platform so that then they have a voice, they have their agency, and therefore an opportunity for them to be able to speak around issues that really matter to them. So these spaces so that the young girls can talk about their sexual and reproductive health rights, they can talk about issues of them accessing dignified work, for them to be able to come back to school, and really a conversation that brings everybody together. The parents, we are not leaving the parents behind. We are not leaving the religious institution behind. We are also not leaving the boys in school, because I think there is this conversation around that we are focusing on the girls and leaving the child, and not remembering that where are we coming from? Why are we focusing on the girls? It's because for a long time they have been marginalized, and we are trying to put all the resources so that then we can be able to bring them a foot forward, to be able to bridge the gap. And of course then working with the other duty bearers, whether it's the police, whether it's the magistrates, whether they're working with the health facility, so that then they can be able to provide that kind of ecosystem.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Joyce, for you, I mean, looking at Mastercard, and then obviously these interventions, we can see why they have been done very clear. A lot of them, as we see, are solutions for a current problem. No pads in school, we buy pads. That's clear. Girl is pregnant, was not able to go to school. Can we come in and say, let this be done so that she can go back to school? Inability to go to school for lack of resources, there are scholarships available. Now, in terms of continuity, thereafter that intervention has been made, what then would you say is the thought to say, all right, fine, we've gotten her to school, we've bought what needs to be bought, but then there is life after the intervention. So where does that, are there plans around that?
Yeah, I would like to build upon Wangeshi's point around who else is losing sleep about this problem, right? So at the foundation, at the Mastercard Foundation, what we are actually looking at is the entire ecosystem of enablers. So earlier on, I talked about those individual level type of interventions. They are needed, for sure. Like if a girl needs a pad, she needs a pad. No question about it. But there's also the community in which they are living. So the problem of, for example, childcare that stands in the way of either a girl going back to school or a young woman being able to start a business and run it is a community level type of problem that together with our partners we are asking, how can we have sustainable mechanisms of childcare that will permit these young women to move back to school and concentrate, or move back to work, or move back to their businesses and run. Do we have solutions? The answer is no. Do we have the space for conversations? Yes. Because what you're describing as come in, fix a problem, and go.
Yeah.
Is what perhaps we at the foundation recognize as the challenge that we have to tackle. It's not about throwing money at problems.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
It's about having conversations about how can we actually dent this problem significantly enough for the solutions created to last long after we have left this space. And when you look at our work and the kind of partnerships we are bringing on board, we're really looking at leveraging the power of non-traditional actors. So the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, for instance, is one of our partners. If you look at their current gender policy, which they launched this year, you actually begin to see a private sector that acknowledges that the community problems that the people face are their business, right? Looking at the problem of violence against women, for example. I mean, a battered woman is not good for your business because they are either using their money to go get treated. or they are losing time that they should be using for work. So getting into partnerships with players that have not necessarily always stayed long enough with this cause to be able to find solutions. When you think about our work with private sector, for example, you begin to elevate the conversation beyond piecemeal interventions into having conversations that will touch onto policy, that will help, can I say, resourcing to tackle these problems that is beyond any one funder. I would like to touch on, for example, what Wangeshi mentioned in terms of a survivors fund as an example. In the continent, I think only South Africa has a public-private funded fund for survivors of domestic violence. Kenya is probably going to be the second country if then the learnings coming from Jasiri Fund are going to catalyze that movement. What does that mean to our country moving forward? Is that the problem of suffering violence at home ceases to be the burden of the victim and actually becomes a burden
For the community.
for the
state.
society.
Yes.
Private public partnerships. So we are really getting into this catalytic space where we are saying, let's have conversations we've not had traditionally. We have some resources, yes, but that's not the solution. The solution is getting communities to speak to each other, getting men, women to look at the problem of unemployment, for example, and ask, what is it we can do to enable our young women and our young men to engage meaningfully? So I'd like to give an example of one of our interventions that I find really fascinating. It's called the Anzisha Prize. The Anzisha Prize targets very young people, like 15 to 22, that want to go into business. So when you imagine the kind of conversations that these children are going to have with their parents, with their communities, as they curate their business idea, you begin to see a movement of everyone having their noses in the same direction, having coming to the table to say, what kind of solution, whether it's a social enterprise or whether it's actually a business that we're going to set up to solve the problems that we see. So currently, actually, if anyone would like to check out the applications for Anzisha Prize are on. It's I think Anzisha. I'll check the actual login. You can check anzishaprize.org and figure out if you qualify and put in your application. That is the one of the interventions that brings a lot of people together. The community, the parents, the children themselves. Girls literally creating solutions for other girls. And one of the things that has been interesting for us is that the businesses that are run by young people have a tendency to employ more young people.
Indeed.
Right? So it's a refreshing kind of idea to think about. And so back to your question about around, is it piecemeal? Is it just solve the problem today and by 2030 we are out of this place? We do really want to trust that by 2030 the ripple effect of what we are doing today is going to continue creating a momentum of change that is unstoppable.
Joyce, you've mentioned a number of times dignified and fulfilling work. Why must we say work and then start with dignified and fulfilling? What does it mean? What's dignified and what's fulfilling?
That's a very good question. So one of the realizations for our focus on young women is that young women are concentrated in the informal workspaces. And in those spaces, you will find realities such as working long hours, not earning enough, and the conditions of work are not necessarily, extremely supportive, favorable for them to thrive. So what does dignity mean and what does fulfillment mean? We actually did ask young people that exact question. And the reason we double our quantitative target with a qualitative target is because it's not every work that you get necessarily gives you the opportunity to thrive according to your, best abilities. So dignity for young people, as they told us, is where their safety is guaranteed, workspaces that do not subject them to sexual harassment, for example, where they are paid equal pay for equal work, where, the kind of work conditions are favorable for them. The commute to work, for example, we know the dangers that young women will be facing if they are, caught in some some hours of the night, for example, pose extra challenges for young women. And of course, also the whole area of what are you earning and how does it compare to the economic situation in your country, right? So it's a whole package of not only getting work, and by work we mean either an opportunity to start your own business, an opportunity for employment. So it's either wage payment or your own enterprise. It has to fulfill your basic needs, but also give you the opportunity to step up to the next level. That is the area of dignity, and safety, and so on and so forth. I don't know if Wangechi would like to add, because that's really the dignity part is where they support our work a lot.
I think Joyce has captured very, very well in terms of if you're employed, is it a conducive environment? Is there safety? I think constantly we've seen young women in spaces where sexual harassment is the order of the day. What is it that the employers can be able to do to ensure that environment is safe? One, of course, is to ensure that there is sexual harassment policy that is well understood by everybody. And if they report, then someone is going to hear them and not victim blame them, because I think there's a lot of that happens. If it's within is it possible for everyone to be paid at the same level that both men and women, young men and young women,
same pay for same work?
Exactly. Is it possible that also as the transition, we can also be able to see them from high school to the tertiary and universities, and for them to be able to access that opportunity. Right now, I think we have seen a big mass of young women who are moving to some of the Arab countries going to look for jobs. Are they dignified? These are the issues that we are talking about. And when we speak about dignifying, is that really dignified? When we see them being violated, when we see them seeking for job opportunity there, there, and when they get out there, then they're further violated.
They're
The mama
violated more.
because they could not be able to get opportunity. So as
Indeed.
we celebrate today, I think there is a lot of work that need to be done. It's good to celebrate, but we're also very aware that we must be able to amplify the things that are holding back the women from accessing jobs that are dignified,
Yeah.
but also for them to be able to thrive.
Stepping up to the next level.
Oh, yes.
Ladies, thank you very much. And as you step out of the studio, we wish you again a happy International Day of the Girl Child. Wangeshi Wachira is from CREAW, and Joyce Muchena is the head of gender mainstreaming at the Mastercard Foundation.